friends, today I'm going to do my wrap up for the first half of June. Now, usually I make sure I film this after the exact half of the month is over, but I will not really get a chance to film on the weekend. So today is Friday the 14th, and I'm talking about everything that I read up until the 13th, which is 6 books so far. Again, it's not only about the amount of books and how long-winded I am with talking about every single book, but also because I just end up forgetting my thoughts about the first couple of books that I have read. So yeah, we're here today to talk about the first 6 books that I read this month, and then hopefully more to come, way more to come in the second half. So first I listened to The Bride Test by Helen Huang, narrated by Emily Wu Zeller. I obviously wanted to listen to this after I loved The Kiss Quotient so much. And I mean, The Kiss Quotient was beautiful, wonderful, one of my favorite books of the year. I knew that The Bride Test would not be able to hold up. There was no chance that I would love The Bride Test as much or more than The Kiss Quotient. I knew that, but I still really enjoyed it. I just really love that Helen Huang puts her identities in these books like so at the forefront. We had 2 Vietnamese leads, and the male main character was autistic. And I also really liked that in this case it was the guy who was autistic, and that he was also the not experienced one when it comes to any kind of relationship or physical stuff. That is incredibly rare in romance novels, as far as I have experienced so far anyway, and what I've kind of heard. And so I really like that, and it was just really adorable how that was kind of talked about, and how much he ended up like developing and just being really invested in making sure that when he has sex with the female main character, that like he just knows what he's doing. Just very adorable. I obviously love the cameos that we had from Kiss Quotient characters, and I just overall had a really good time reading this. And also the ending like fucking punched me in the gut. Like it was one of those happily ever afters that just like took my breath away. So yeah, made me very happy. And I think I gave it 4 stars initially. I think just looking at the difference between how much I enjoyed this and The Kiss Quotient, and then also looking at some of the other 4-star reads that I have, I think my final verdict is a 3.5 out of 5 stars, but obviously still very great. Then I read Last Bus to Evelyn by Sophie Cameron. I did a full video review for this, which I'm gonna leave in the description and in the info card. This is a YA contemporary with a fantastic element. It is about this portal fantasy world, and I really enjoyed this. I think that it had a really interesting take on portal fantasy worlds and on escapism. Just the idea and the concept and how this portal fantasy was used for character development and for storytelling was so well done. It had some really great themes in there, really strong friendship and family dynamics. There was so much going on in this novel, honestly, that the portal fantasy world really was just almost like not important compared to everything that went on in the real world. It's just that the main character being there just influenced the real world so much, and that's just what I enjoyed immensely about this. I think that it was just a really interesting take, and definitely something that I think if you're interested in the whole concept of like portal fantasy worlds, then you would definitely enjoy this. I did think that the world building wasn't well done, as in I think the portal fantasy world, Everland, was not explained enough. I don't care that we never got an explanation for it. Like, did we ever get an explanation for Wonderland or Narnia? I mean, I don't know. I've never read Narnia, so I wouldn't know. But, you know, we don't get explanations for portal fantasy worlds usually. But what I just wanted is, I wanted much more to like dive into this world and be completely lost in it. And I didn't get that. I think that the writing was pretty basic and simple, and I would have wanted to, I think, especially have more of a contrast between the real world and Everland, and how the writing changes as well when the main character is in Everland, and just describing the things that he sees in Evelyn. I also wasn't really a big fan of the romantic relationship. I don't even want to call it a romance because there's just not enough in there to really call it a romance. It is a male-male relationship. I just think that the relationship in itself was not really well done. It just was not built enough. You could tell from the beginning who the love interest was. Like immediately you knew, okay, this is going to be a thing. But it's just that when something happened between the two, it kind of happened from a 0 to 100, and I just thought that it cheapened their relationship and also this novel. I just think it was not necessary. I don't think that it was needed for the story. And if I say that, someone who literally loves every fucking single little romance out there, that does say a lot. I just really think that the author didn't take enough time or didn't have enough time to really build this romance well. And especially looking at how well the friendship dynamics were done, I'm like, if this would have just been a friendship, then it would have been perfect. Their friendship dynamic could have been so strong if the author hadn't tried to make this a romance, because then she really could have focused on that one thing. And so that was definitely something that I was disappointed in. Overall, really enjoyed it. Again, especially family and friendship dynamics and just the themes in this novel and what the Portal Fantasy world did in this story. But it was just a fine read for me overall, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read the final 2 stories in the Ghost of the Shadow Market anthology. I should probably look up the titles and tell you what they are. The Lost World and Forever Fallen. I have already read the first 8 stories because they were published, just as short stories. You could buy them on Kindle, or in my case they were available at my library, but the final 2 are only published in this binder. I was honestly really pissed in the beginning, but now I feel like, I'm still not very happy that you can only buy them in this binder, but I just really like how these stories took place after Queen of Air and Darkness and how it gave some closure to Queen of Air and Darkness. I feel like obviously a lot of things are wrapped up very nicely very nicely, not in a good way, in Queen of Air and Darkness, but then there's obviously also some things that are left very open, and just knowing how long we're gonna have to wait for the Wicked Powers, it was just a bit of a pain. And so reading these 2 stories, I feel like it just gave us a little glimpse into the future of the characters. I don't know, for me, even though it also just opened up some old wounds, I also think that it was just kind of okay, now I feel properly ready to wait all this time for the Wicked Powers. Does that make sense? I'm not sure. I don't know. They just really made me happy, especially the last one. The last one made me all kinds of things. It made me happy and it made me sad. It made me feel for characters that, Cassandra Clare knows. She knows she's making me feel for these characters, but morally, I understand that I should not feel for these characters, but I can't help myself. I'm trash, and apparently I'm even trash for... I can't say anything, but I'm trash is all that I want to say. So yeah, really, really love these. I'm so happy, so fucking happy that I fell back in love with this world as much as I did. And honestly, I'll say it once and I'll say it again. This is all thanks to Melanie. I honestly don't think I would be at a point where I am right now with my love for this series if it wasn't for Melanie. So shout out to Melanie. I'm wearing this shirt for you as well. So I love you. Oh yeah, I gave Ghost of the Shadow Market overall 4 out of 5 stars. I honestly have not separately rated the last 2 stories because I was just whatever. It's a 4 stars anthology, but definitely has one of my favorite short stories in there. Then I listened to Hot Dog Girl by Jennifer Dugan, narrated by Brittany Presley. This is a YA contemporary that just came out, and I love the cover. And it is, a queer book, so I was really, really excited to read it. And I overall enjoyed it, but oh my god, the main character was a huge pain in the ass. And it's one of those characters where, she is wrote that way very, very consciously. She is supposed to be unlikable, but just because someone is, I say this again and again, and I feel like someday I have to make a video about this, but just because someone is written in a way where it's like, oh, the author wrote them being unlikable, that doesn't mean that I have to like that they are unlikable. You know, sometimes I just don't enjoy when characters are annoying like that. I get the appeal, and I also understand the character in itself, and I think the character was well done. That's what I will say. But I didn't enjoy her. I didn't enjoy reading from her perspective, even with the character development that she went through. I also definitely think that this had its problems because the main character does identify as bisexual, and she starts fake dating her female best friend to basically get the attention of a guy. And I honestly genuinely think that, like, let's say very optimistically 5 years down the road, this is going to be something that, like, nobody will bat an eye at. I think that it's going to be completely fine because, like, queer people are generally accepted and stereotypes are probably still a thing that exists, but, like, we don't really care about it anymore. And then I think you can totally play with those stereotypes, and you can totally just, like, use those stereotypes in your stories and just generally not really give a fuck. But I think we're just not there yet. So I definitely had just some issues. I wouldn't call this book problematic in any shape or form. I just think that it had some pretty big flaws, and I just think that there were some things in there that I don't think the world is ready yet when it comes to the representation of queer people. That's what I will say. It did not really took away my enjoyment because I know those stereotypes aren't true, and I want to live in a world where we can write queer characters in ways that right now seem stereotypical or that feed stereotypes. But at the same time, I just can acknowledge that this is still an issue, especially because I think so many of the character dynamics were really, really well done. Like, I loved the main character's dynamic with her best friend. I loved the main character's dynamic with her male love interest, and I loved how all of these relationships developed and where they ended up as people. But it was just kind of always a little bit with a bitter taste in my mouth, you know? One thing I will say, which made this book something that will forever stand out to me, is that this had one of my favorite, abso-fucking-lutely favorite coming out scenes to a parent ever. I honestly don't think that I've ever read a coming out scene like that. I think that a lot of YA is either about teens already being out to their parents, or it is about them just being closeted the whole time, or it's like not a big deal. And like in this case, it also really wasn't a big deal, but at the same time, it was just beautifully done. And the author really took its time with this scene. It made me so happy. Okay, real talk, my battery died, and I think I was cut off in the middle of the sentence, but I also think I said everything I wanted to say about Hot Dog Girl. I give it 3 out of 5 stars. Next, I read The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. This is another arc that I had, and I have a full review for this one as well. I'd highly encourage you to watch it because it is a wonderful book that deserves all of the attention, and I just talk about all the good things in it in that review. But I really, really loved it. I thought this was so enjoyable and honestly just so wholesome. Like, this is just the kind of sapphic historical romance that I needed in my life, because it really just did not rely on historical accuracy to be a good book. It's one of those books where, like, it does not ignore the existence of homophobia. It's just that we don't ever get to witness it. It is just something that, like, we kind of know it's there, and the 2 main characters, they do have to hide, you know, they can't walk around outside like holding hands and kissing and stuff like that, but the people around them are accepting and supportive, and it just made me so very happy. This also put a lot of emphasis on consent. It talked about the misogyny of those times, and one of the characters is a female astronomer and what that means. And again, even this issue was handled very well in a way that it wasn't ever too serious or, like, you know, men making disgusting threats. Like, it was just kind of more of a comedic way to deal with it, and I just love that so much. It just gave me so many happy feelings when it could have been completely different. And I have read some historical books before where it focused on sapphic characters, and it just was too much, and it just was not a pleasant experience. And with this one, it was such a pleasant experience. It was wonderful and beautiful and so lovely, and just made me unbelievably happy. I think that definitely within the community of people that kind of read romance and that read queer books, I think that this has been getting a lot of hype, but I definitely think that it deserves way more hype. I just need people to read this so that we can get more wholesome novels like this. I really love this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It could have been a 5 if the romance had been a little bit more slow burn, but that's literally the only thing that I have. Other than that, everything about it is just wonderful. And finally, I listened to Hate to Want You by Alicia Rai, narrated by Summer Morton and Jeremy York. I read this for the Buzzwordathon, which is currently still going on. This was an experience. I obviously have been listening and in general reading quite a lot of romances in the past couple of months, but I think this is probably like the darkest that I've read, which it's still pretty not dark. I know there's much worse stuff out there, but just as far as the themes and the storyline around the two main characters, it just dealt with a lot of like intense, serious stuff. Whereas I usually read things that might have some serious topics in there, but are more on the funny side and like lighthearted. This one, not really lighthearted, but I still really enjoyed it. I loved the depression representation. The main character, the female main character, has depression, and I really, really enjoyed reading about that, as much as you can enjoy reading about depression, but just the way that it was portrayed and the way that she dealt with it and how it influenced her life and also her relationships. And I also like that it was kind of talking about the fact that like depression is an illness, and it's not usually something that just, you know, just happens through some event, but certain events can be triggers for it. I think there was a really good balance between kind of explaining like this thing happened to me and it just spiraled me into this really horrible depression, but also I'm just sick and this is just something that I have to deal with either way. It's not the full cause, it's just kind of a trigger. I definitely really enjoyed that. It had some really amazing sex scenes. Y'all know by now probably that I love sex scenes where like the characters like still hate each other or stuff like that. And this one, it was very much that they kind of constantly just were like, you know, this is a bad idea, like we shouldn't do this, blah blah blah. And those scenes just give me life. I honestly didn't care that much actually about the storyline that was kind of going on around them, but I still just had an enjoyable time, like even not really caring. And I did like a lot of the side characters, so I'm super excited to continue with the series so that I can dive into those character storylines. I think that's gonna be really, really fun. I think this is not really a book to pick up if you have not read romance before. I definitely think this is something for people who have already delved into the genre a little bit. I definitely recommend picking it up, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So yeah, that's everything that I read in June so far. I'm really happy with my reading so far because I've read some really, really great things and some things that I really enjoyed. Let me know how your reading month is going so far, and especially let me know if you've read any queer books this month that you've been really loving. I make new videos every Wednesday and Sunday with occasional reviews on Friday, so click subscribe to never miss anything and hit the little bell so you get notified as well. And thank you so much for watching. I guess I'll see you soon. Bye!